Hello Commanders, this is Commander Bloodsign, and hello to Frontier Dev as well. This video is actually for you guys today. I want to give you guys a little bit of feedback of my experience. I just recently purchased Odyssey, and I've been getting back into the game. I bought all the new ships, been playing around with them, trying to get a feel for them, and getting a feel for Odyssey and the systems there. And I've been really impressed. The ships add a lot, and Odyssey adds a lot as well. Just being able to walk around your ship and see the sheer size of it, getting to walk around these stations and do shopping and talk to people. The NPCs look great. I thought they were going to look awful based on the little snippets that we have in the main ship missions. All the people in there look pretty uggo for the most part, but the in-person NPCs look great. The game looks great. I'm very impressed. It runs pretty well. I don't have a terrifically high-end computer, and everything is working really well, and it works well with my Xbox controller out of the box, which I am thrilled about, because that's something that a lot of these other titles can't be bothered with, unfortunately, and that really turns me off because I don't have a desk, so I'm not using a mouse and keyboard to play video games generally. Alright, well, this is kind of a list of a whole bunch of different things. I want to call attention to some issues that need to be fixed, and talk about, well, we're just going to go from stuff that absolutely should be addressed at some point by FDEV in the future that are actually issues, serious issues that need to be fixed, and then we're going to work from that end of the spectrum out to suggestions that I have that I think can make the game better, and sort of a wish list. And it's going to be attainable stuff. It's not going to be things like, ship interiors, which I understand that the workload required to implement that is astronomical. And, so that's not something I'm going to talk about today. We're going to talk about things that are realistic, that are attainable, and that can improve this game significantly with a fairly low amount of effort. So the first thing I want to talk about, this has been an issue for probably years, because it's been a really long time since I've played this game regularly, and this issue is still here, hasn't been fixed. And that is when you go to store armors in storage, in your stored modules, there's nothing anywhere on these pages of information that tell you what ship it's for. So you can see I have all these armors here, all these armors, and they're clearly for different ships. I have some small ones that the transfer fee is only 100, and then I have this one here. The transfer fee is 1.3 million, so it's for a bigger ship, but I have no idea what any of these are for. It's not labeled what ship they're for. That's a pretty glaring oversight, and something that makes storing armor kind of pointless. That is something that really I consider to be a bug that needs to be, or a huge quality of life oversight that needs to be addressed. So I would appreciate it if that gets fixed at some point. Alright, so let's see what's next on the list. Yeah, clear armor. Here we go. Okay, so let's take a look at okay. So I think there should also be an option to turn off animations for hardpoints. Like whenever you go to equip a new weapon, you actually have to watch the old one retract and then the new one come out. There should either be a setting that allows you to change the speed of these animations so that it's very rapid, or just allow it to be instantaneous. Or alternatively, and I think this is an even better option, play the full animation, but have it going on in the background, so that the interface updates instantly, but then in the background you have the animation playing, and then it kind of, locks that slots that you, well, I think you understand where I'm getting at. That obviously some tweaking will be needed to make this work. It's just very tedious having to sit there waiting for 10, 15 seconds or what have you for every hard point to go through its animation and so forth. It's just really annoying. There's no purpose to it. It was cool the first couple times that it happened. There was a bit of a wow effect there, but after that it wears off, and then it's just like a major negative that's just eating up time unnecessarily. Games are supposed to be fun, and having to wait significant amounts of time in order to do basic menu functionalities is not fun. Alright, so next, let's talk about ARCs and ARCs prices. So, how are we going to do this? I guess we'll just go into livery. Take a look at some of this stuff. So when I was playing Elite Dangerous years ago, things were much more affordable. You could sometimes get ship paint for $600 or $800, but now look at the pricing on all this stuff. It is absolutely outrageous. Now keep in mind that you can earn, is it a weekly 400 or is it a monthly 400? I don't remember off the top of my head. It's out on the menu actually. Let's go take I think it's a weekly 400. But this meant that if you saved your ARCs that you were earning on a weekly basis, you could save up and buy something decent every couple months or every month or whatnot. The way the prices are set up right now, it's outrageous. I think that these prices are inflated. They need to be reduced down to, they're inflated by 4 or 5 times as expensive as they should be. And it's just keeping people, like in the past I used to every year buy, maybe $50 or $100, sometimes more depending, worth of cosmetics and stuff for my ships. But now at this point it's like everything's so unaffordable I can't justify that anymore. And it is really frustrating. It's kind of like, I guess what I'm saying is, the way it used to be for me is the ability to earn a little bit with the weekly ARCs amounts that you can get, that would allow you to buy a few items here and there. That then sort of wet my whistle for wanting to buy more, and so then I would occasionally buy packs of ARCs, or go on a little spending spree around the holidays when you guys had different discounts and stuff like that. Being able to regularly buy a few things kind of wet my whistle for more, because I'd get a new paint job for my ship, and then it would kind of put in my mind, well, okay, this would look so much better if the weapons were this color, or if I had these decals or whatever, or if I had a ship kit. And you can see that I bought some of the ship kits and stuff. The way things are right now, though, with everything priced so exorbitantly, I'm just not interested in buying anything at all. It's just out of reach. And I think that's kind of a problem. It's not to say that you can't have highly priced items for the whales or the power players who are willing to drop tens of thousands of dollars on this game, but you should have stuff for people of all levels. Like, I'm an ordinary guy that there are some months that I struggle to pay the bills and buy enough groceries to keep me healthy and functioning. Now, there used to be better years where I actually had disposable income, and that was kind of more where I was 6 years ago when I was playing Elite Dangerous more regularly. Right now, life is kind of more of a struggle for survival. And I just want to say that, I think this system can be improved in such a way that ordinary people can afford to make ARCs purchases. And also in line with that is, you got to give people options of things that they want to purchase. Some of these ships that have been around for a while are a poor example, because some of these actually do have some ship paints that are pretty cool. But let's go take a look at some of the options for the newer ships. Yeah, let's grab one of mine. And the creativity and availability is just not that great in terms of the ship paints either. That's something that needs to be improved. And the same thing for weapon skins, from what I can tell. There's a lot of stuff that is kind of lazy and does not really look realistic at all. And I've mentioned this in comments and stuff before. There are entire categories of ship paints that, if you were rolling them out for every ship, you would provide a lot of options and a lot of appeal and incentive for people to buy these options. Like, look at some of these. They're just... they're alright. I mean, they're not terrible. But the categories that I would like to see would be military camouflage and dazzle type paints. So a dazzle paint on a Navy ship, for example, is these geometric and jaggedy looking things that actually do make it harder to discern a warship, you know, that's off in the distance on the horizon or whatever. I'd like to see camouflage and dazzle type paints. Those things would really appeal, I think, to your player base who are military buffs and aficionados. I'd like to see paints that resemble high-end yachts. So that would be more of like a gloss paint in different colors. And I'd like to see more metallic type paints. And then another thing that would be pretty cool for some of these paint jobs is if you had micro patterns built into the paints as well. So you could have like a hex pattern or a triangular pattern or a square grid pattern. And this would just, you can make these materials look like they're, you know, carbon micro tiles and things like that. There's so much stuff you can do to have tons of really cool paint options that would be appealing and that people would want to buy. But then again, if you know you're asking people to pay $10,000 for arcs for a single paint, that's not realistic. You know, cut that down significantly to something that's a little more affordable, like $1,000 or $1,200. That way at least someone can get a new paint every month. Or even back in the day, like I said, I'm pretty sure I was buying items sometimes for $800 back in the day. It just makes people want to get more, want to buy more, want to buy packs of arcs and so forth, and actually put money into the game so they can trick out their fleet. And we're just missing a whole lot of options that have real-world corollaries in, you know, high-end yachts or military vessels and stuff. I think it's just a real shame. So more cosmetics, and this does include cosmetics for the guns and stuff too. I was looking at the hat, and to be honest, the cosmetics for guns are pretty sad. Let's go take a peek, and I'll give you an example of what I mean. Alright, so we're just going to do manage loadouts. So the base look of all the weapons is actually pretty decent. There's sort of an aesthetic that they've got. And this goes in line even with, you know, the real-life firearms community, where they have these sort of modern designs that sometimes come in flashy colors, fancy Cerakotes and stuff like that, and they're more like a showpiece, if that makes sense. But then you start getting down into the nitty-gritty, and then that's where you're going to want your camouflage paints, your flat black, and so forth. I just didn't really feel like the paints were too... Let me see if we can... Yeah, weapon cosmetics. I didn't feel like they were very realistic for a lot of these. I mean, I guess some of these are alright. There's definitely plenty of options. But I think that could be better, and there could be more options. And there's some pretty basic ones ones that are missing here, like just flat colors, like flat black, for example. And then metallic as well. These are all clearly paint jobs. What if someone wanted, silver, gold, copper, bronze, all these other, like some of the metallic paint jobs and stuff. So I think more options would be better. And again, the pricing on these is ridiculous. Look at how many of them there are. And you're asking $6,000 for one, $600 for one. For something like this would be more realistic. It's something that's achievable. People can at least earn one or maybe two a month from playing the game, and it's going to drive them to maybe want to buy more so that they can kit out their entire arsenal of how many total weapons there are, 8 maybe, with the same matching skins, or have different sets that match the different armors and stuff like that. You're really missing out on opportunity by overpricing all this stuff. Especially, I think you're going to have an influx of new players who are excited about the new ships and about Odyssey and the other things that you're doing, but they're not really, because of the inflated ARCS prices, they're not going to be spending as much money as you would want to see on that stuff. Alright, so some other thoughts that I had. One thing, when it came to ground combat, I was disappointed about a couple different things. I was disappointed about the flexibility of the different suits. I think it's really... I do think that the suits should have individual strengths and weaknesses, and obviously they do. But in terms of the things that you're allowed to carry for each suit package, like the genetic sampler is only for the Artemis suit, the 2 weapons is only for the Dominator set, and the Arc Cutter is only for the Maverick suit. I think that's a bit of a mistake. I think the inherent stats of the suit should be where the uniquenesses are. So for example, the Maverick suit, since it's more scavenging, I like how it has the goods capacity, assets capacity, and data capacity are all greatly expanded. I think that's great. I think the Artemis suit should have the increased air comparatively, and the Dominator should have really good shields and suit durability, so the shields recharge very quickly compared to the other suits and stuff like that. But I think that the suits, as part of the upgrade process, you should be able to get it to the point where you can carry any of the devices. So if you want an Arc Cutter with the Dominator suit, that's doable. I think you should be able to swap around the devices, and I think you should be able to upgrade suits with more weapon slots. And I will say that I think there's an opportunity here. So the Dominator has 2 main weapons and then 1 secondary. I think that it might be worth considering changing the submachine gun type weapons to a secondary weapon, and have some of the suits allow you to carry 2 secondaries and 2 primaries. The primaries being on the pack, and then the secondaries, 1 being on each thigh. Just like currently the secondary is on the right-hand thigh from the sideline. So that would be a grand total of potentially 4 weapons, 2 primaries, 2 secondaries, 2 on the pack, 1 on each thigh. I think that's something the more weapons the merrier, let's just put it that way. So, just a suggestion. But I think having more flexibility in terms of the gear that you're allowed to carry would be good. It would let people really build a suit that suits them a little better than the options that we have here. Because I'd like to have a suit, ideally, that both includes the Arc Cutter, because, let's face it, it's pretty much an indispensable tool if you're doing anything around a human settlement. But then it's like, you have to sacrifice weapons for that, but if you're around a human settlement and you're doing something that involves combat, you're going to want more weapons. So it's kind of like, I felt like these suit archetypes as they are, they shoehorn you into certain types of gameplay that, when really you want more freedom, I guess, is thing that I was doing, I was just, playing around with it at an outpost, and I noticed that a lot of the containers have a code that's required to open it, and you can get those codes, using your profile analyzer and getting a certain security clearance and stuff. But then there's not really a way for you to save those codes to your suit computer, and so you just have to remember them and mark the waypoint of which container you're going to unlock next and try to remember that code. It's just a huge hassle. It's really annoying. I think once you get clearance to the base, those codes should get, the ones that you look at in the interface, should get remembered to your suit. And so then what happens is when you go and you see those containers, you can automatically just put in the code that's remembered. It doesn't require the player to have to remember all these stupid codes for, while they try to remember a code for each individual container that they want to unlock. I think that's a very tedious gameplay choice. Automatically remember the codes, please. That would be a huge quality of life upgrade. And another thing that I think would be worth doing is allow the Energy Link overload feature to work on blocks and to overload a container. I think that is something that would be pretty cool too. And I think it should be designed in such a way that it would drain your overall energy quite a bit, so that it's not just something that's too easy to do, but it would be really costly in terms of energy. So you'd have to plan your energy supply and really think about, is it worth it to try to open all these containers and stuff? But I think we need more options. And I will say that using the arc cutter is really tedious with the controller, because you'll get to the point where you've cut like a C shape around the panel, but there's a couple little hanging chads, so to speak, that are keeping the panel from popping off. It's a huge pain. I don't know how that process could be improved, or if it can be improved, but I'll just put a little plug in for that. I'd love to see someone do a little bit of fine-tuning on that for those of us who are playing with the controller. Alright, and so the last thing that I have to mention is I think there's a way that engineering can really be turned into something special in 2025, or the near future for this game. So currently we have a pretty robust engineering system, and players have been doing the grind to engineer their stuff for a very long time, and it's really rewarding when you're able to do that. And so there's kind of a problem where if you make changes to the existing engineering system that makes the current player base lose all their progress, or have to redo stuff, that's going to make them kind of upset. But at the same time, I do feel like there's room for improvement to the engineering process, and so here's the proposal that I have. I think that a change could be made where modules can have up to 2 engineering blueprints applied to each module, and then possibly 2 experimental effects, and they can be applied together. So for example, for multi-cannons, you could have a multi-cannon that is both overcharged and rapid fire at the same time. And you might have it as, so you can see that I have some as overcharged and some as rapid fire, but you could actually engineer them so that you have an overcharged rapid fire multi-cannon. But then all the downsides of everything gets stacked. And so what this would do, if this system is implemented, is you would have people who've already done their engineering on stuff, and it would encourage them to, experiment more and see what combinations work out really well. For example, rapid fire and overcharge together would make a pretty solid weapon, but then, there's the heat generation and other issues that would go along with it as downsides. But they wouldn't feel like they're losing out on anything. So they have kind of maximized all their modules, and now it just takes them back to, all that work that they did, it's still there. All the improvements that they did, it's still there, but you can go further and fine-tune things more if you want to. I think think that would keep the current player base who's been doing this a long time engaged, but then without sacrificing, you know, the work that they've already put into engineering in the past. And then I think it would just really freshen up the whole engineering process as well, where now you have all these different myriad combinations. Not only are there the combinations of the different grades, to where you might need to find a sweet spot, where it might not make sense to engineer something as overcharged grade 5 and rapid fire grade 5. It might make more sense to do overcharged grade 3 with a rapid fire grade 5, just for the balance or so forth. It just adds all these different combinations and possibilities. And I think having 2x experimental on stuff as well would also be pretty cool to shake things up and add a little bit of flexibility also. So that's just my recommendation, something I would really like to see, because I do, the engineering is tedious, but it's very rewarding. And I think it'd be even cooler if you could fine-tune it more by having 2 engineering blueprints per module. That would be pretty sweet. And then, like I said, 2 engineering experimental effects would be pretty great as well. And the same system could still be in effect, where you still have to do all the work, you have to gather all the mats and all that stuff, but you can just apply 2 effects to a module. That'd be pretty wild. Obviously, that's going to shake up the PvP meta, and it will just add a lot more depth to the engineering system than is there already. And then finally, I think it'd be kind of cool to, in Super Cruise, have a, we could call it surge instead of boost, kind of a speed boost. But my thought on how this could work is that the boost button would generate a Super Cruise surge, and it would require that your weapon capacitor be full, and when you use it, it would completely drain the weapon capacitor, and then it would give you a certain percentage boost for a very short amount of time on your Super Cruise. Maybe say 50% speed boost for 10 seconds or something like that. I think this would be a pretty cool option. Add a little bit of extra flavor and depth to the Super Cruise experience, especially if you have someone hunting you or you're hunting someone else. Just give you that extra bit of another option, basically, to make things interesting, especially in the PvP arena. I think that would be pretty wild. Anyway, so those are my thoughts on a couple things that I think need to be fixed, and a lot of things on the wish list that I think could be implemented fairly easily, and make really just add a lot to the game. And I hope you guys have found this to be interesting. And yeah, have a good one. See you out there.